Good morning, New Brunswick, and welcome to the New Brunswick Today Show for Friday, October 21st. I'm Charlie Cradaville. We've got a great show for you today. Our guest is Sharon Hubberman. She's a candidate for mayor in the city of Perth, Amboy. We're thrilled to have her. She'll be on a little later. It is a little chilly again this morning here in New Brunswick, 67 degrees and cloudy. Some light rain falling on us here in downtown. Now, that rain is expected to be steady with showers continuing this afternoon, and thunder is possible as well. The high is 76 degrees today, and the low tonight, 51. Now, we've got just a few traffic advisories for you this morning. Traffic is going to be reduced to a single lane on Kirkpatrick Street between Bayard and New. That's in front of the New Brunswick Police Headquarters. Also, Remsen Avenue between Welton and George Street is going to be closed for sewer construction, and as is Welton Street between Remsen and Lee Avenues. And finally, Somerset Street is going to be closed between James and Home Streets today. Now, to all of you watching this broadcast live on our Facebook page, please do us a favor. Share this video with your friends right now. We've got a great show coming up, and we want as many people to see it as possible. You can also comment on the video with your questions and your feedback, and also reach out to us at our Twitter account. That's at NB_today. And of course, later today, this video is going to be available on our YouTube channel, as well as the NewBrunswickToday.com website. Now, last night, history was made right here in Middlesex County as the Democratic Party appointed Santi Nara to join the Middlesex County Board of Chosen Freeholders, the powerful group of elected officials that runs the entire county government. Nara leaves behind her position on the North Brunswick Town Council, where she has served since 2010. She became the first South Asian representative to serve on the Freeholder Board in county history last night, and she received a standing ovation after being sworn in. This is her being sworn in for the second time that night by North Brunswick Mayor Frances Womack. We wish her all the best in the new position. Nara will enjoy a temporary appointment to the board, but she will have to run for election next year if she wants to keep that spot. She replaced H. James Polos on the board, who, as you might remember, left that position after 18 years to take the top job at the Middlesex County Improvement Authority. Now, the New Brunswick city government has settled a civil lawsuit brought by the two sons of Barry DeLoach, a city resident who was shot and killed by New Brunswick police officer Brad Burdell in September 2011. We learned at this week's council meeting that taxpayers are going to pay $300,000 on top of the legal bills that have already been paid to get the family to drop the case. Now, the council admitted that they aren't told about settlements like this, and the only reason it was discussed at that meeting was because New Brunswick Today asked about it. Now, DeLoach was 47 when he was tragically killed by police in a backyard on Troop Avenue. He was unarmed, and the killing sparked massive protests, not unlike the ones that have been increasingly common across the nation today. Those protests called for accountability and reforms, but one day at the protest, police dressed up for a riot, and you can see the video right here. They showed up at a peaceful protest and arrested two protesters in a startling scene. You're watching that footage right now. That was from September of 2011. Now, Burdell, the officer who killed DeLoach, resigned in disgrace after being brought up on departmental charges, but he was ultimately not indicted by the special grand jury that was seated by Middlesex County Prosecutor Bruce Kaplan. So, believe it or not, since the killing, the officer has actually been paid more in taxpayer money than the entire settlement amount for the DeLoach family. Burdell was put on paid administrative leave following the killing, where he made more than $125,000 before he finally resigned. City officials also duped the public into thinking he had resigned earlier than he actually did, allowing him to collect even more taxpayer money. And since then, he was approved for an accidental disability pension that pays him more than $67,000 every year. So, accused criminal, NJ governor, and Donald Trump surrogate Chris Christie is expected to show up in court on November 23rd. That's according to his team. Christie had originally promised to immediately appeal a judge's decision to issue him a criminal summons for official misconduct. That immediate appeal has not happened, and that charge actually stems from Christie's alleged failure to take action to reopen access lanes to the world's busiest bridge. after he learned of the purposeful traffic jam his aides had caused to punish Fort Lee. Now that is perhaps, not coincidentally, the same borough where Christie is going to be required to appear in municipal court in what is sure to be a high-profile spectacle the day before Thanksgiving. We'll keep you posted on that case as it develops. According to the complaint, Fort Lee residents were, quote, deprived of the benefit and enjoyment of their community as a consequence of this intentional, evil-minded act. Now, the great thing about New Brunswick Today show is you can leave it on in the background, open up a new tab in your browser, and check out some of the great stories on our fantastic website, newbrunswicktoday.com. I'm going to take a seat and we can tell you about some of those stories real quick. And welcome back. So a $17 billion merger between Walgreens and Rite Aid is on hold. Our intrepid business reporter Dave Schatz has the story about Walgreens, the #1 pharmacy chain in the country, extending its deadline to acquire Rite Aid, the #3 chain, saying that the $17 billion merger should close by January 27th, 2017, rather than at the end of this month as it was originally expected. Now, if approved, the deal would yield the largest drugstore chain in the country. New Brunswick is home to both a Walgreens and a Rite Aid, and again, check our website for the full story from Mr. Schatz. Now, underneath that great article, you'll see a cause for celebration if you're a New Brunswick Zebra fan. Stephen Roca has a great article about the NBHS football team's big win over the Edison Eagles last week. It was a tale of two halves for the Zebras, who were clicking on offense in the second half and pulled away from the Edison Eagles on homecoming night to pick up another Red Division win. It was a big night for Zebra quarterback Jeffrey Seawright, pictured here, who is one of the team's most gifted and talented athletes. Jeffrey Seawright, who was also named Homecoming King, turned in a career-high performance with 5 passing touchdowns. He was 14 of 20 on passing and ended up with 319 yards, tearing up the field. The Zebras are playing Old Bridge tonight at home. Carlos Ramirez has the story on a physical attack that is under investigation by local law enforcement. The attack occurred shortly before midnight on October the 6th, and that was at Saddam Street near French Street. It left 2 men injured and another on his way to jail. According to Captain J.T. Miller of the NBPD, 2 residents of the city, ages 22 and 25, were assaulted and received non-life-threatening lacerations to the abdomen. Witnesses said they heard a commotion, and minutes later the area was stormed by police and ambulances. Paramedics were seen talking to one of the victims who was leaning against a wall there at Saddam Street, and police arrested 32-year-old Cesar Garcia of South River at the scene. Garcia was charged with aggravated assault and possession of a weapon for an unlawful purpose. At this time, there's no known motive for the attack, and local police have not publicized the incident with a crime alert or a press release, so New Brunswick Today is the only place you can read about it. Now, looking to make some extra cash for the holidays, looking for work, well, Amazon.com, the largest e-commerce company in the world, is hiring more than 5,000 seasonal workers in the Garden State, and David Schatz has the story on New Brunswick Today. Workers are needed at centers in Avenel, in Woodbridge, Elizabeth, Logan Township, Moonachie, and Robbinsville, as well as Swedesboro, according to an Amazon spokesperson. Amazon is creating 120,000 seasonal positions at its U.S. fulfillment centers, sortation centers, and customer service sites for the holidays, according to a company news release. And if you're interested in applying for one of those jobs, the link is in our article, again on the newbrunswicktoday.com website. Now, last week we brought you the story of the Middlesex County Board of Elections. They're the only government board we've been able to find in Middlesex County that refuses to allow people to record their meetings. New Brunswick Today was on hand for last week's meeting because we heard that Sharon Hubberman, our guest today, was going to raise some concerns about a newfound lack of bilingual poll workers in the areas of Perth, Amboy, where there are high concentrations of Spanish speakers. Ms. Hubberman is the chairwoman of the Perth Amboy Republican organization. And until recently, she was responsible for appointing as many as half of the poll clerks who get to decide who gets to vote and who doesn't. It's a very hard job, very important job, and in some places it really helps to speak Spanish. But Hubberman, who was born and raised in Perth Amboy, told us that a bunch of the poll workers she recommended were ousted from those positions and replaced with other people who don't speak Spanish, and in some cases were legally ineligible to serve as poll clerks in Perth Amboy, period. The Board of Elections was blowing off her concerns, so she and other concerned citizens came to learn more and speak up at that meeting last week. Now, shockingly, even though the board doesn't make recordings of their meetings, they decided not to allow cameras in the room to document what was happening. During the meeting where the recording was explicitly disallowed, one Board of Elections commissioner, Dan Katz, admitted that there were, quote, chronic problems with Election Day in Perth Amboy for in excess of 50 years. Now, why the board doesn't want any video or audio recordings of these discussions is highly suspect. But at New Brunswick Today, we want these important issues to be discussed, and we want to help facilitate that discussion. That's why we invited Ms. Hubberman to join us today, and Sharon is the one of 4 candidates running for mayor in Perth Amboy. She's also, as I said, the chair of the Perth Amboy Republican organization, and after this little clip, we're going to have an interview with her to learn more about this issue. We tried to video the meeting, we tried our best. I had my cell phone with me, and this is a very brief video of me being told to put that cell phone away and stop recording our government at work. We'll be right back with Sharon Hubberman after this.
Excuse me one second. Mr. Cradwell, could you put down your camera, please?
I'm sorry,
Could you put down your camera, please?
am I not allowed to?
Yes, we right to the vote while you were not here, okay? So I'm asking you to please put down your camera.
There was a vote taken by this board that you're not allowed to videotape
Yes, sir.
the board.
Yes, sir. Please.
These meetings are not public.
No, meetings are public. I'm not going to go into it with you. Please put it down.
Shame, shame.
Shame.
And welcome back to the New Brunswick Today Show. We're now joined by Sharon Hubberman.
Hi, how are you, Charlie?
I'm great. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So just tell us right off the bat, how did you get involved in politics and government in Perth Amboy? You've been at this for a while. Tell us what made you want to become active.
Okay. I've always been an advocate for the community. I've always been taught to be a volunteer through the leadership of my mom and my family. What I started to see in Perth Amboy is not only an increase of taxes, which were affecting a lot of the residents, but there were a lot of quality of life issues that were occurring in the town. With that in mind, with my background in finance, I decided back in 2012 to get involved within the community, but on a different level in terms of helping the community restore its community status and take it into a positive direction, which is going to bring progress to the town. That passion and that sense of wanting to serve my community is what really got me involved in wanting to make a difference.
Great. And so tell us, as the chairwoman of your party, you've traditionally helped recruit folks to work the polls on Election Day, that very important job of controlling who gets to vote and who doesn't. Tell me, why is that such an important job?
Okay. So in Perth Amboy, we're approximately 70% Hispanics. And at the polls, we want to ensure a fair and democratic process. According to the New Jersey state laws, each poll clerk has to be equally represented between the Democrat and the Republican Party.
So each party submits one poll clerk for each district, right?
Yes, so there's 6 poll clerks, so there's 3 that are Democrats, and then there's 3 that are Republicans. Why is this important? At the polls, it's nonpartisan, meaning that you are there to serve and facilitate the voting process in accordance to the rules that govern the poll clerks. What is also important by having the bipartisan participation is that there's no manipulation at the polls. And in addition to that process of preserving that democratic equality, it's also to be able to facilitate communication with the voters, so that if there is any questions that need to be addressed, and especially in Perth Amboy, which is 70% Hispanic, we have a lot of voters who only speak Spanish.
Right.
And therefore, in certain areas in Perth Amboy, it is critical to not just have one bilingual poll clerk to be represented, but at least two bilingual poll clerks.
Especially this year, because it's going to be very busy with the presidential election and all
Yes.
that. So you want to be as well staffed and well skilled as you can, right?
Absolutely. And for that purpose, part of the task that I've worked on for the past couple of years since I've become chair is to meet that demand in terms of having bilingual poll clerks. Also to have representation of individuals who live in Perth Amboy, that they actually work in the as poll clerks. Because previously we've had a lot of individuals who were not from Perth Amboy, and they were working at the polls, and also they were not even Spanish speaking, which, you want to have a good mix of everyone, but in certain areas it's really critical to have bilingual poll clerks.
Right. And so tell us about how so that's how it works in an ideal world. How has it been going this year? Tell us about what happened, how you found out about these changes, and what that means for voters.
So Board of Elections had informed me that there is a new designee, that because right before the polls, we as the chair need to submit our list of they're called recommended poll clerks.
You get to suggest who you think
Yes.
should take these positions.
Yes. And upon them receiving this recommended list, they go through it, and then they issue credentials to the individuals if they are or are not to work. I submitted my list on September 9th, and after that time, I received an email from an individual from Board of Elections stating, we are not going to be utilizing your list because there's a new designee, and we're going to be accepting that list. And I was very surprised by that information.
Right. They
because-
basically said, we don't want your list, or you're not in charge of picking those folks anymore. Somebody else is going to pick them. And
Yes.
and there were some major differences between who replaced you and the list that you had put forth. Tell us about that.
Yes. So after receiving a copy of the list and comparing it to the list that I submitted, there were a good group of bilingual poll clerks that were removed.
And in the areas where it matters the most.
Yes. And what I found that why did this occur? In addition to this event, there were additional poll clerks who were added from different towns in Middlesex County. Now you can work at the polls if you're a resident of Middlesex County, but after I looked at their voter registration, they were registered Democrats. So it just called into question whether or not these designations were in compliance with the NJSA laws in Title 19. And also, I wanted to know why, if we already had registered qualified individuals, why they were removed, and instead these other individuals who are not bilingual were included. And that was a very, very big cause of concern. And I did raise that issue immediately once I was able to gather the detailed information.
Right, you put it in writing to the Board of Elections, and you said that kind of throws off that balance that you're supposed to have between the two parties. But you also raised these concerns about folks being totally ineligible, right? Wasn't there a candidate for office who was about to be working the polls in his own election?
Yes. There was a candidate that was put to work at the polls, and you cannot have that. It's a Perth Amboy Board of Education candidate. You cannot work at the polls. The law is very clear on it. So in addition to the other, what I consider not in accordance with the law, we have an ineligible person who should not be working at the polls.
Right, okay. And so tell us, what did the Board of Elections have to say when you put this in writing to them? Were they receptive? Did they want to immediately take action, or?
No, I received, after following up with them, I did provide them with a packet of information regarding the details and regarding everything that we just discussed, the eligibility requirements, the statute, and their message to me was that they found no merit for a hearing. I was requesting a hearing. They informed me that based on this information, in so many words, there's no merit, which I was very disappointed with receiving an email like that, but which is why I went to the public. I spoke at the public portion.
Right. So you actually came out to this meeting, and we wanted to show our audience a video of it, but they literally wouldn't let us record it. They wouldn't let us record video or audio at the hearing. And you weren't the only person. Other people were concerned about this and were speaking up about this issue. And I don't know. Did you think that they started to see it your way after you came in person and spoke to them, or are they still not taking this seriously?
My overall impression was, I believe that I argued very well regarding what the main concerns are, and they are, number one, there's communication, that we need to facilitate excellent communication between the poll clerks and the voter. And I've seen this before, where voters have been turned away from the polls because of their frustration. And
sure.
one of the frustrations is if there is a language barrier, there is a number that you can call to the Board of Elections, but oftentimes, especially in an election like a presidential, congressional, I'm sure there's a lot of other concerns happening at the same time. So in order to even prevent that point, it makes more sense to have more individuals who are working as poll clerks who are able to also communicate in Spanish. Just makes sense.
Right. And the folks who you submitted, you told me it's unusual to change who the poll clerks are in between the primary that's held in June and the general election in November, right? That's highly irregular to make all these changes in between the two elections.
Yes. So once you make a designation for the June primary, once you submit those individuals, normally they're good for a year. So they will, upon confirming that they're available to work at the polls, oftentimes they just want to continue working. It's like, I just don't, it is irregular that individuals who've customarily worked before, that they're not working, unless perchance there's some big violation.
If they screwed up in June, then they might not be invited back. But if they did their job, if they showed up, that usually it goes to the same person in November if they can do it, right?
That would be a most positive outcome. Yes.
Well, tell me, what are your next steps for this issue? Are you going to continue to bring?
Yes. So part of what was met in the public portion is I submitted already the list of individuals who are bilingual poll clerks because they had informed me if there's a vacancy on the day of election that they would then contact them and hopefully they'll fulfill that open spot. But yet, the issue regarding all of the Democrat poll clerks that are working as Republican poll clerks, I was informed that issue, they're just going to discuss it, but they're not going to be able to have a remedy before the November election. And I find that to be inconsistent with the law, where it states that the Board of Elections, for any reason, can add or remove poll clerks. So it wasn't consistent with what I feel has been previous practice for the Board of Elections, and it is a very big concern for me because we have a presidential, the congressional, we have the mayoral election, we have the Board of Education and the council race. Back in 2012, the turnout in Perth Amboy was immense. We had lines, and if there is already a situation where there's not an equality or a sense of equality, or there aren't enough individuals who are able to communicate in Spanish, that causes an alarm. And we need to be respectful of our community and be facilitators of their right to vote. And when you make changes, I'm not against changes, but when you make changes where it negatively impacts a community and the democratic process of a town that I just love, and I love the people that are in my town, it's just, how can I not speak up for them?
Right. And I wanted to ask about all these different elections. So Perth Amboy has a kind of a history of election irregularities. There was just a year or two ago an election that got overturned, had to be done over again. There have been, as Commissioner Katz said, problems, chronic problems for more than 50 years, half a century with those elections. Tell me, have you noticed other things this year that are also irregular? I know the Board of Education had an unprecedented kind of switcheroo that disenfranchised potential candidates, and there's, one of your opponents has accused the administration of, targeting them with the police for campaigning. Do you notice other problems with the election?
There's in Perth Amboy, what I see, and one of the reasons why I'm running for office is, with any town, when you have certain individuals that want to continue term after term after term, they become complacent, which is why I'm for term limits.
Cool.
Okay. And what happens is that there is a sense of authority or power where intimidation starts to permeate throughout the process. And as one of the, I ran in 2012, so I know when they say dirty politics, where they take down your lawn signs, where they rip your literature, where they have volunteers take your literature, where you are doing your best to exercise your freedom of speech, there are areas and concerns regarding it. And at the polls, if the same instances were to happen, what happened in 2012, if they happen again in 2016, it gives this sentiment of what that you're afraid to hear, that there could be voter fraud, that there are manipulations that are occurring. And as a candidate, you don't want that to happen. You want individuals to turn out at the polls of not because they feel obligated, but because they want to cast their vote, that they want to support you or they want to support the other person. So in terms of now with the situation with the poll clerks and that's a little unsteady, what else is, I cannot speculate what may or may not happen. I can only
Raises a lot of questions, sir.
By the concerns that I have currently as it relates to the poll clerks and what I have seen in town regarding what areas they are complying with or not complying with. Another example, the lawn signs. So there's an ordinance that we cannot exceed of 12 square feet. But yet there are certain candidates that are exceeding those limits, and when it is reported, it's going unchecked. What else? I mean, there's many instances that I can elaborate on, but essentially, I would love for there to be not only a democratic process, but all of the community to just be watchful of what's going on and not be afraid to speak up or to stand up, because it doesn't have to be this way. So with that in mind, I petitioned the council at their last council meeting, and I had asked them to please write a letter to the Attorney General so that they show their presence at
On
this
election
upcoming,
day
yes,
to
at
enforce the law.
election,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I encourage the other candidates as well to submit a letter to the Attorney General and be vocal that we want their presence and that we will stand up or not tolerate any irregularities at the polls.
Great. Well, thank you for your advocacy on this. It's really important that when you know something like this is going on, that you do fight it, and you do speak up, and you push back. So that's really good that you're doing that. Tell me, how's the campaign going otherwise? What are you hoping to accomplish if you win?
I believe that the campaign is going very well for us. We are operating on a grassroots level because I really believe it's important as a candidate that you meet directly with the voters and that you also listen to their concerns. And that brings me a lot of satisfaction when we're able to do that. Of course, we're down to the wire. We're only about 20 days, left. But if I was to receive the honor to be the mayor of Perth Amboy, I know that we as a community will need to restore ourselves. And what does that mean? Perth Amboy is not only a historical town. Perth Amboy is not only a historical but a beautiful town. It has a wonderful waterfront, but it's operating in an industrialized model. We're now operating Perth Amboy in the 21st century. So one of our, we have many goals. We have many goals that we would like to implement. But overall, it's really taking Perth Amboy and bringing progress into the town that helps offset all of these increases, such as the taxable revenues, which are impacting a lot of families. And I mean, there's been high foreclosure rates. The jobless rate is very high, meaning the unemployment rate is near 11%, which is a lot higher than the national average. Job creation, or the growth of people being employed, is less than 1%. It's at 0.38%. So these are lackluster results because of the format that they're operating in. And by what I mean is I am a big advocate for what's called sustainability or green sustainability, where we're able to generate some types of alternate revenue from, say, our garbage, for example. We are in the 21st century where technology is a huge driver, and we have what's called a new Smarter Perth Amboy plan, where it addresses the garbage issues, where it addresses the parking issues, where it addresses a lot of how we go about attracting certain types of industry into the town. It addresses our infrastructure regarding our water, regarding the air quality. So part of our goal because I have a running mate, her name is Annie Crespo, she's running for council, yes, that we see that Perth Amboy can really make a mark and be that urban community that has 21st century technology and a vision where it creates not only sustainable living, but it really addresses and provides solutions to our community, and they're not there. And I think it's because when you have a vision, you need to look not only within your community, but you need to spread your wings and look outside. And I ran for freeholder, and running for freeholder, it gave me a bigger insight of what is plaguing other municipalities and what is necessary to implement the solution. So by having that broad perspective, it just enables, and listening to the residents, it just enables more facilitation of, okay, well, this is the priority, this is what we're going to work on, and this is how we can really turn around the town and make it flourish, because currently it isn't. I mean, less than 1% job growth. That's not good. And I know that the mayor keeps saying that she's brought in these big industries and that then they're bringing in more jobs. But you need to question some of the decisions that are being made. Bringing a warehouse near a waterfront I don't know if that's necessarily the most, that's not going to be the biggest driver in economic growth for the
The
town.
best use of the land.
Absolutely. And if you recall, when you have warehouses by a waterfront, there's always some sort of crime element that becomes involved, and you can, research it. We have definitely researched it, where there's a lot of decisions that are being made where they're not really looking at the general impact. There's a lot of development of more housing, but yet, what is the direct impact? We have families that are coming in. The quality of life issues is already at a low point. We have children that need to be taught at our schools, but yet when we have more housing and our schools are already, oversubscribed, then what happens? So part of what we're doing to bring Perth Amboy the progress that it deserves is we're thinking outside the box. We are there as community advocates, and by having that drive, we look at things a lot differently than what the current administration is doing, because we're new.
Right, and so I want to talk about kind of the history of Perth Amboy's mayorship. You have the fellow who was in office before the current mayor is still in federal prison, right?
Yes.
And then Wilda Diaz, kind of knocked him out of office and came in as a reformer, as somebody who's going to be changing things. But over time, she kind of got into the Democratic political machine that runs this whole county and really has a tight lock on the local towns. And she had promised to stop after 2 terms, right? She said, "I'm only going to do 2 terms," but now she's running for a 3rd. Tell me, what do folks in Perth Amboy feel about this mayor? She won in a landslide the first time, and now she's got sort of more power and more experience, more seniority. Do people still, do people think it's time for another change in Perth Amboy?
The sentiment is very strong. When we were collecting signatures for our nomination petitions, there were individuals who came up to us and said, didn't the mayor say that she was only going to run for 2 terms? Well, we need to hold her accountable. And they signed our petition. So there is this strong sentiment that as any person who's running for political office, if you say or make a promise, people expect for that person to come through for them on that promise. We term her as Oath Breaker Wilda. She made an oath and a vow that she would only run for 2 terms, and she's running for another term. Now, it's under the auspices that she wants to continue the progress. But as I've stated, what progress? We've had unemployment that is still at 11%. We have a job growth rate that's less than 1%. It's 0.38%. We've had the highest numbers of foreclosures. We've had incidences of shootings, stabbings, car thievery, burglaries. So people who live in town, they are honest with what is going on in the town. So the picture that is being painted by this administration is through rose-colored glasses. And if the terminology is like that this is progress, then I question, how is it progress if we as a community feel that our quality of life has deteriorated, morale in certain areas within certain departments is low, and it all boils down to leadership. When you have leadership that is failing the people, well, we need to hold them accountable.
And now, if you win, would you hold yourself to a certain number of terms?
Yes.
You would. When would you? call
yes.
it quits?
So I believe in the 2-term limits. Actually, I was already gathering individuals to create a coalition for the term limits, and there are a lot of individuals that would work to collect signatures. First, you try to work with the council to see if they can put a referendum, and there's been talk because of the Faulkner Act you may not be able to do that. I haven't been able to read the Faulkner Act thoroughly to see if that is the case, but in either way, we have a constituency or a group that will form a coalition, and if they need to put it on a referendum, we will put it on a referendum, because by having term limits, that gives any person who is looking to serve their community a time frame upon which they have to fulfill what the goal is for the town. So in business, you don't just operate, well, I'll do that tomorrow. No. In business, you have to have your business plan, you have to have a short-term goal, a long-range goal, a medium-term goal, and hold yourself accountable to that time frame. So Perth Amboy, the way it's working is we're utilizing our resources, which is taxpayers' dollars, and perhaps directing them in areas that they could be more optimized. And now I'm sounding a little bit more financial, but essentially what is happening is when you have a budget that's about $79 million, you need to not only be able to allocate it in the areas that will help serve the community, but you need to do so in a time frame to complete your projects, to make sure that there is progress, that you see them and not be dependent or be holding, well, if I don't complete this, then let me finish it in another 4 years, and then they don't complete it. Well, no, just give me another 4 years. And that's what's in Perth Amboy. We've had how many mayors in the last how many years? Not many.
Right,
and term limits will change that.
Yeah. And so even if there's not a statutory limit, you'll limit yourself to 2 terms in office.
We want to pass the statutory limit. Like that is one of our goals that we want to have passed. Now, if the will of the people will against it, which I don't believe that is the sentiment. Like, who wouldn't want term limits? I don't know, but no, I know for myself that I am committed to the 2 terms if the people of Perth Amboy so give me the honor to be their mayor. But I'm going to work my hardest to make sure that it is a statutory ordinance because what will happen is after, let's say, 8 years, then the other person can say, well, I'm going to be here for another 20 years, and Perth Amboy, it needs to shine bigger and better than where it is now.
Right. My idea would be, I think we're overdue for a constitutional convention here in New Jersey. We've only had 2 in our state's history. Both times they've been in New Brunswick, actually. And issues like this, term limits that have been, just around forever, never getting done by the leaders, that's one way to do it, would be a statewide constitutional change. So I wish you well with your campaign. We're very grateful you could join us this morning. Is there a place where people can go, either in person or online, to find out more about your campaign?
Yes. We have a website. It's called www.werereadypa.com.
We're Ready.
WEREREADYPA.com.
We're
ready.
And that's the website for Sharon Hubberman and your running mate for City Council, Amy Crespo. There are 3 other candidates in the race. We will invite them to join us in the coming days. And thank you very much, Sharon Hubberman, for your hard work to protect this upcoming election. We're going to have a lot of election coverage coming up for you on the New Brunswick Today show in the coming weeks as we get closer. A lot of folks focusing on this presidential election, which is actually not directly elected by the people, but we're going to focus on the local and the county races that are so important to the people here in Middlesex County. Sharon, best of luck to you, and thanks everybody for joining us.
And call them out.
Column L,
Yes.
Sharon Hubberman
Thank you.
and Anit Crespo. We're going to leave you today with a video I made just a couple days ago. This is Radio La Rocho, is a musical act bringing traditions from Veracruz, Mexico here to the New Brunswick Public Library. This is their performance a couple days ago. They'll be back in town on November 17th, and we'll have all the information for you for that upcoming event. But here it is. We'll leave you with the great sounds and performance from Radio La Rocho here in New Brunswick.
Bonito es tu cascabel, vida mía, ¿quién te lo dio? Vida mía, ¿quién te lo dio? Bonito tu cascabel. A mí no me lo dio nadie, mi dinero me costó. El que quiera cascabel, que lo compre, que lo compre.